Today, we are taking a closer look at an important issue that continues to shape discussions around the Iraqi dinar, the significant difference between Iraq's official exchange rate and the rate seen in the parallel market. The information we are examining comes from an article titled "Iraq Struggles to Contain Volatile Dinar Currency Disparity," which highlights the long, historical decline of the Iraqi dinar, the impact of decades of conflict and economic disruption, and the continuing difficulty of bringing official and unofficial exchange rates closer together. According to the quoted article, the Iraqi dinar reached an extraordinary level during the 1970 seconds when one dinar was reportedly worth around $4. That historical comparison is often mentioned when discussing the dinar today, but it is extremely important to understand the economic circumstances behind those different periods. A currency's exchange rate cannot be evaluated simply by comparing an old number with a modern number. Exchange rates reflect economic conditions, monetary policy, foreign reserves, inflation, trade flows, confidence, political stability, and the structure of the financial system. The article points to the 1990 seconds as a major turning point for the Iraqi currency. Conflict, international sanctions, economic isolation, and severe disruptions to Iraq's economy contributed to an enormous deterioration in the purchasing power and external value of the dinar. The article describes the currency eventually reaching around 3,000 dinars per US dollar during that period. That history is important because it demonstrates just how strongly geopolitical and economic conditions can affect a national currency. Today, the situation is fundamentally different from the crisis conditions of the 990 seconds, but Iraq still faces an important currency management challenge. The quoted report states that the central bank has maintained an official exchange rate around 1,320 Iraqi dinars per US dollar, while parallel market rates have remained significantly higher, reportedly exceeding 1,530 dinars per dollar. Whether the exact figures move from day to day or differ between markets, the larger issue is the gap itself. For Iraqi dinar followers, this distinction is critical. An official exchange rate is not necessarily the same thing as the rate that every individual or business can obtain in every transaction. The official rate is determined within the country's monetary and foreign exchange framework, while the parallel market reflects actual supply and demand conditions outside the official channels. When those two rates diverge substantially, it can create economic distortions and uncertainty. So, what causes such a disparity? One major factor is foreign currency demand. Iraq is heavily connected to the international market through imports, energy revenues, and foreign trade. Businesses and individuals who need US dollars may turn toward different channels, depending on their access to the formal banking and foreign exchange system. If demand for dollars rises faster than the supply available through official mechanisms, pressure can develop in the parallel market. Another factor is confidence. Currency markets are heavily influenced by expectations. If consumers, traders, or businesses believe that access to foreign currency could become more difficult, they may increase their demand for dollars as a precaution. That additional demand can place further pressure on the local currency in unofficial markets. Banking infrastructure is also an important part of the story. Iraq has been working for years to modernize its banking sector, improve compliance procedures, strengthen financial institutions, and increase integration with international financial standards. These reforms may appear technical, but they can have a direct connection to exchange rate stability. A stronger banking system can make it easier for legitimate businesses and citizens to conduct foreign exchange transactions through regulated channels rather than relying on informal markets. This is why the parallel market premium should not automatically be interpreted as evidence that the Iraqi dinar is about to experience a dramatic revaluation. It is better understood as a signal that demand, confidence, access to foreign currency, and the formal financial system are not yet perfectly aligned. For short-term economic conditions, a persistent gap between the official and parallel rates can create several challenges. Importers may face uncertainty over the effective cost of foreign goods. Businesses may have difficulty forecasting expenses, Consumers can also feel the impact through prices, particularly when imported products represent a significant portion of household consumption. A wide currency spread can also complicate monetary policy. The Central Bank of Iraq has to consider not only the official rate, but also liquidity, inflation, foreign exchange reserves, banking sector conditions, and overall economic stability. Any adjustment to the exchange rate framework therefore requires careful consideration, because a currency policy decision can affect prices, government finances, imports, exports, and public confidence. For the Iraqi dinar itself, the most important question is not simply whether the official number changes from one figure to another. The deeper question is whether Iraq can create the economic and financial conditions necessary for the official exchange rate to become more credible and closely aligned with market conditions. That process could involve stronger banking institutions, improved compliance with international standards, better access to legitimate foreign exchange channels, reduced dependence on cash transactions, and continued efforts to increase confidence in the domestic financial system. There is also an important distinction between redenomination and revaluation. Discussions about removing zeros from banknotes are sometimes confused with discussions about increasing the real external value of the currency. These are not automatically the same thing. A redenomination is primarily a change in the numerical denomination of the currency. A genuine improvement in purchasing power or exchange value depends on broader economic fundamentals and monetary policy. This distinction matters because historical exchange rates can easily create unrealistic expectations. Seeing that the Iraqi dinar once had a much higher value decades ago does not mean the currency can simply return to that level through a single policy announcement. The economic environment of the 1970 seconds was very different from the economic environment of modern Iraq. In the long term, however, Iraq does have important economic strengths. The country possesses substantial natural resources, particularly oil, and has significant potential for investment, infrastructure development, trade expansion, and economic diversification. If reforms improve productivity, strengthen institutions, develop the private sector, and increase confidence in the banking system, those factors could contribute to greater currency stability over time. But long-term currency strength requires more than strong oil revenues. A sustainable currency environment depends on fiscal discipline, credible monetary policy, functioning financial institutions, economic diversification, stable institutions, and confidence among domestic and international participants. For people following the Iraqi dinar, this means the most useful indicators to watch are official central bank policy announcements, foreign exchange market conditions, inflation, banking sector reforms, foreign reserves, government fiscal policy, and developments affecting Iraq's international financial relationships. The difference between an official rate around 1,320 and a reported parallel market rate above 1,530, as cited in the article we are analyzing, should therefore be viewed as an economic issue that deserves attention, rather than as a guaranteed signal of a future currency event. If the gap narrows sustainably, that could indicate improving market confidence and better functioning of the formal foreign exchange system. If the gap remains wide or becomes larger, it could indicate continuing pressure within the currency market. The key word here is sustainably. A temporary movement in either direction does not necessarily represent a fundamental change in the Iraqi economy. Real progress would be demonstrated by consistent improvements in market functioning, financial sector credibility, access to legitimate currency channels, and macroeconomic stability. The history of the Iraqi dinar shows how deeply currency values can be affected by political and economic conditions. From the much higher historical valuation cited for the 1970 seconds, through the severe deterioration of the 1990 seconds, and into today's managed exchange rate environment. The dinar has reflected the changing circumstances of Iraq's economy. That history also provides an important lesson for anyone monitoring the currency today. Exchange rates are ultimately connected to economic fundamentals and policy decisions. Headlines can create excitement, but responsible analysis requires looking beyond a single number or historical comparison. For the short term, the official to parallel market spread remains one of the most important indicators to monitor. For the long term, the bigger story is whether Iraq can continue strengthening its banking sector, improve financial transparency, reduce distortions in foreign exchange markets, diversify its economy, and maintain credible monetary and fiscal policies. If those reforms progress, Iraq could gradually create a more stable and efficient currency environment, but the timing, scale, and outcome of any future exchange rate changes cannot be guaranteed in advance. Investors, currency holders, and viewers should therefore separate confirmed policy developments from speculation and always evaluate financial information carefully. The Iraqi dinar story is not simply about one exchange rate number. It is about the broader transformation of Iraq's financial system and economy. The narrowing of the gap between official and parallel markets would be an important development, but it would need to be supported by genuine improvements in the underlying financial system. We will continue monitoring official announcements, monetary policy developments, banking reforms, and exchange rate movements as new information becomes available. If you want responsible, factual, and balanced Iraqi dinar updates, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay connected for future developments. Thank you for watching, and remember that this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not financial advice.